Has there been state financing in order to bring these things forward, or was it on the harbour's own investments?
Well, it is infrastructure that belongs to the region of Mecklenburg-West Pomerania as well as to the city of Sassnitz. Those are the two shareholders of the harbour, and the harbour also invested in their infrastructure almost on a permanent basis, right? And we then refinance those kind of upgrades through certain fees that we pay to the harbour in order to use the respective part of the harbour. That's I think is the principle, but obviously you need to have a regional government in this case that is willing to pre-invest in the infrastructure, even at a point in time where we didn't have made our final investment decision to build the respective wind farm, right? So there is a certain commitment needed, and that for sure is part of the success of the Arkona project, because otherwise if you wait only until you have the final investment decision, then it's far too late, right? And then we probably would have had to choose for another harbour in this case.
Okay, so in a way it was risk willingness of the regional government that made this early development or in-time development possible, even without having the long-term contract of E.ON in hands, so to speak.
Right. That's right. And that comes back to your question from earlier. That is why we believe we would like to establish contacts very early and also create a certain atmosphere of trust, because we couldn't sign a firm contract at the time, but we provided a certain confidence and comfort that we will make it happen, and that is also what finally was then successful.
And with that respect, were there delays early in the process? So was there an idea of building Arkona 2 years earlier than what has happened in this discussion?
Indeed, there was a plan to build Arkona earlier than what finally happened, only to finalize it this year. But this is depending on a lot of external and internal factors when the final investment decision then is finally taken. And we had struggled at the time with some internal factors, but also with the fact that the respective regulatory regime in Germany for the grid connection was changed when we just were about to make a final investment decision. And that was not very helpful in this context to come to an earlier kind of execution period.
And not foreseeable in when exactly that will happen, when the shift will be.
Yeah.
So I guess you have made quite an effort to be before the shift of the systems.
Yeah, finally we managed, right? But any kind of change of a certain system that is known always creates a certain period of uncertainty. And that is not very helpful for bigger companies to make a final investment decision and decide to invest, in our case, more than €1 billion into such a project.
You've mentioned also the synergies, the effect of that there is a neighboring wind farm and of course infrastructure in the harbour already. Was there a tight dialogue between the two projects from the start? How do you handle that? Is it really, were you both like pushing for the local businesses, for the regional establishment?
Yeah, I think it was a close dialogue right from the start, because there is less of a competitive situation, at least at the time that was the case. And it's more of a kind of an atmosphere like helping each other in a way. And helping each other is also always coming back to establish and create some regional and local players that then, in our case, 2 or more wind farms can come back to. Because if you have to bring equipment or labor or what have you from very far away, there are a lot of disadvantages. Number one, it's not very agile, right, in terms of getting it quickly. it's also probably not very sustainable, because if you bring people from very far away, they might be not very sticky to the task itself, whereby if you have people that are located close by, they might sense that they could create some more business upcoming, and that I think is in a way helpful for both partners in our case. Yeah. So we created quite some synergies. One prominent example is environmental monitoring. That is something that the authorities in Germany basically would like every wind farm to do, and every wind farm has a certain scope, which is 2 years of monitoring before construction, then monitoring during construction, and 3 years afterwards. And that's quite a big area that you have to monitor. And in our case, with our neighboring wind farm, we managed to do that in the same kind of area, which obviously is commercially very beneficial, and was also executed by a regional company doing this monitoring. But it's also quite helpful in terms of environmentally friendliness, because you have to collect, for example, birds where you fly with a plane through the whole area, that you only do once. You have to do also some fishing, which you only do once. So I think it was a win-win situation for all parties.
Sounds great. You've been into this already, and I think it's worthwhile to point out more firm what are the advantages of having regional businesses involved. You mentioned kind of a dedication. People are living there. They want to do the best for their own surroundings, so to speak. And you mentioned that it is quite agile, that you can get quick response rather than if you had a supplier that is having their main resources in another place. Did I pick that up right?
Absolutely.
Were there more when it comes to agile? Is it things are sometimes not happening as planned? Okay, you have to react quickly. You have to see, where can I source that? Where can I get that? And of course, I guess local businesses have a better knowledge of which other people or businesses could be involved in order to solve the task.
Absolutely, it's probably still a little bit, I know somebody who knows somebody who can help me. Sounds maybe funny in the context of a very big infrastructure project, but we had several occasions where this has helped us to avoid certain delays or extra costs, where just by personal context that was established. And that is always based then on this regional or local level, because otherwise you don't have this personal contact. What I think also helped us in our specific case is this combination of construction and operation, because if you have a partner in construction and he basically is motivated and minded to also get some scope for the 25 years of operational period, then obviously he can have a certain base load, which basically creates an own business over a very stable long period. And that is again something which is more interesting for a regional or local player than for somebody who's more on a, national or even global scale.
That is all about the advantages also for the project. In order to get those and in order to harvest those, can you, so to speak, may it cost in the beginning when you start off these processes? Is there a willingness from the project side to say, okay, we might have to invest a little bit more, or we might have to invest a bit of time, or in order to get this up and running? How would you describe that? Is there such a willingness, or is it like, no, we are sourcing on a European basis maybe, and that's
I think it's somehow a tricky question, to be honest with you, but let me say the following. I mean, we obviously do competitive tendering processes for all our contracts, right? But there are certain thresholds in which case we might defer from that and might be happy with only 3 alternative offers. Yeah, so we don't need to do European tendering processes anyways, which is in a way already quite helpful. But then we still have possibilities, especially again in those unforeseen situations where we can then place directly certain scope or contract with people that will help us to prevent even creating higher costs, right? And that is what I'm talking about if I'm talking about being agile and working with local or regional partners, because they always have the ability to help out on short notice. And that might create some marginal extra costs, to come to your question, but it will help in a long-term or bigger picture to avoid much more of those costs. But every regional or local player has to be competitive, right? There is no policy and also no intention to place direct contracts because somebody is active in the area or based in the area, because we are under quite a high competitiveness for offshore wind these days with all the tender regime, and there's a very clear expectation that we basically build and operate offshore wind